I'm gonna jump right in because your film is was so mind-boggling, especially that final scene with Ariel walking out of the bank and all of those people out there. So my first question for you is, I read your statement on, is this like the influencers in reality? So where did this all for you start? This whole concept.
So I had seen a photograph years ago of this young, kind of good-looking couple, being led away by the LAPD. She was kind of seductively leaning in for a kiss or smiling or something, and they had sort of said, "Oh, this new Bonnie and Clyde," right? And that image kind of just always stuck with me. And so that stuck with me. And then I was looking at the time, I was looking to do like a heist movie. I want to do something in that genre, and I started doing research. And I tend to gravitate towards female-driven leads, female-driven films, and I saw, Bonnie and Clyde pops up. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Nobody's really done a version of that in the way that Bonnie and Clyde were lately. And so I just said, well, Bonnie and Clyde were built up by media to sell newspapers. The myth of Bonnie and Clyde was a media creation. I said, well, what's the current version of that? And I think obviously it's social media. And I became interested in the intersection of social media fame with and the pursuit of likes and follows and crime. I think crime is uniquely American, and outlaws are uniquely American, and the celebrity of outlaws is uniquely American. And I sort of felt like the combination of those two was both interesting and somewhat inevitable in terms of how this sort of might exist in real life. Because the thing is that social media no longer requiring gatekeepers anymore. Mm-hmm. Anybody with a phone can reach an audience of millions of people if they build up that audience. And I think that's a little scary, at the end of the day, because of something like this movie. Because I also think that Americans are also uniquely susceptible to celebrity.
Yep.
And I do believe that if this ever happened in real life, we would probably all be following it. And whether that was hate following it, or love following it, or indifferent following it, it still then contributes to the overall value of that person's account, right?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the hate following and the love following, and brings me to that final scene where she walks on. My eyes were popping out of my head to be like, this is kind of scary because I can honestly see this happening.
Right. So I wanted to make a movie that sort of subjectively threw you into Ariel's experience. I didn't want to make something that was like an objective, sit back, let's judge these people, let's show you how terrible they are. Like, I just, as a filmmaker, wasn't interested in that. I really was interested in the subjective experience of somebody who was a bank robber influencer, and what that meant to you, and the psychological effects of that. And so at the end, it didn't feel right. The only natural conclusion to me was that she wins, because I think that she becomes increasingly delusional over the course of the movie. And not to say that the ending is a delusion. It's not a fantasy. It's not intended to be a fantasy. But I think she's sort of proven right, because I think that ending was meant to go, okay, she's lost. She's been arrested. Dean is dead, and she's just going, is this my destiny? Is this what I fought for? Which is specific, deliberately ridiculous in the thinking. And then she comes out and it goes, no, like, America loves you. It doesn't matter if you're going to jail. Like, people are tuning in and they are there for you. And it just becomes this big smiling finale, right? I just wanted to, I knew that people are going to hate, possibly hate it. But they also might possibly love it. But the idea was the ridiculousness of the movie and the story is leading to something that, frankly, is already happening in real life. It's not with crime. It's not that far away from it.
Was the ending for Dean always how it was going to be?
Yes, because I always felt like the movie was a a triangle love story, a love triangle between her fans, and Dean. And I knew that Dean was always going to lose out. Like, he had to die. And he had to die in a way that made her think, I've lost what I thought I wanted. But then with that ending, she goes, oh no, I didn't lose it. Like, she, once she leaves Dean, it's like, who cares?
Yep.
You know? But I think that that's part of it. Dean is only as valuable to her in the sort of fantasy, not literal fantasy, but the fantastical version of her movie, the movie of her life, right? Like, the movie is meant to be seen as Ariel's Instagram feed.
Yeah.
Of her social media feed, and Dean is only as valuable as he's needed, and he was no longer needed.
Well, so, I thought what also was interesting was I kind of felt like we were on the audience goers, were on the same journey as Dean. You kind of loved her at some point, you hated her at other points, and then you all kind of reached the same point where it's just like, this needs to end. Like, it's not going to end the way we want it to, so let's just go. Let's just call it this last one and go. And they go on this last one, and you can't help but think, like, you know, oh, they're going to make it out, they're going to make it out. And then the ending, you're just like, well, okay, well, maybe she'll have a turn of heart. And then she gets in, you're just like, what the heck?
Yeah. I mean, and, you know, all that was, it was certainly intentional. I wanted to kind of just, the movie for me never existed in a world of subtlety, because I don't think social media exists in a world of subtlety. It's not about subtlety. Subtlety doesn't get you attention. Even from making a movie perspective, subtlety, I realized at some point, unless subtlety is backed by an expensive marketing campaign, nobody's going to pay attention, you know? And I think, like with this movie, I mean, I intentionally set out to make something that was batshit crazy, you know? Like, I really wanted to, because part of it I felt like, well, one, what's going to get seen? What's going to get people talking? What's going to get people going, that was nuts? Or even just like, again, I knew that people were going to hate it, but I hope that they hate it so much they told all their friends they got to go watch this movie.
Yeah.
You know? And I wanted to exist in that, and you had to create a character that was batshit crazy. And at the same, you know, because the intention was not to make, let's make a realistic version of what this would be like. It's not that. It's satire. It's meant to be out there. It's meant to be ridiculous. But at the same time, it's almost, it's ridiculous, but it's not that far from being a possibility, right? I mean, we just had an experience where an influencer was arrested in Tucson or in Arizona because he was looting and filming. You know, and I'm not convinced that we're that far from a social media company, because everyone's, you know, you'll see people like, oh, they would take this down immediately. I'm like, I can see a social media company going like, we're not law enforcement. Like, who are we to say what a crime is? They haven't been convicted.
Exactly.
They haven't been found guilty by a jury of their peers. This is all, you know, like yeah, but is this really a crime? This could be, like, and leaving it up. You know, and so I don't think we're that. I think people think better of some of these companies than they actually would be, because what matters? It's the metric. How much money are you making? How many people are viewing it? That's the currency. You know.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
We're not living in a moral world anymore. We're living in a fantasy one. America's a fantasy one.
Yep. Well, how did your casting was great? Bella Thorne and Jake Manley, they were just fantastic. So how did that come to be?
Bella came on about a year before we started shooting. She was involved from, you know, she came because our one of my producers sent her manager the script. She was looking for something like this. She read it, she loved it. We had a call, and she got my vision of it, and so she came on board, and it was really exciting because we had so much time to develop this character and talk, and I got to really get a glimpse of her world. Right? Because this is the world she lives in. Yeah. And so a lot of what you see in the movie, I said to her, I'm like, look, I'm not bringing you on as an actress. Like, I'm bringing you on as a collaborator. Like, you're an artist in your own right. You're a director in your own right. You're a creator in your own right. Like, you understand this world. So, like, help me fill it in. Right? Like, help me build this character up in a way that, like, not only are you excited about, but, two, feels true to your experience. And then Jake came on much later. Jake came on much closer to production as we started seeking our dean, once we had financing. And his experience was, you know, he was somebody who, again, like, was super excited about the role. playing somebody completely different than he had ever played before,
Mm-hmm.
and was really all in, from not only a perspective of having a couple months of being able to work together on the character, but also, I mean, he was like, hey, I think I want to dye my hair. I was like, oh, great, do it, and then now I can't imagine Jake doing the movie with brown hair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and stuff even from the weapons gunpoint. Like we had him on, firing ranges with former special forces and special ops guys.
Wow.
Because I wanted the gunplay to be real, and I wanted it to be like hyper real, right? Like there's no way somebody would get this good with a weapon like Bella, right? Or with like Ariel. But I wanted it to be because my description of that, like when she first handles the handgun, my description of it in the script was related to the idea of King Arthur pulling Excalibur from the stone.
That's
right?
awesome.
Like that was how I thought of it. That this was so ingrained in who she was going to be that this moment then contributed to everything else. And so they were both great. They both really dove into the role. I can't see anybody else playing the role.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really exciting to just be on set and create an environment where, because we knew these characters so well, I was able to just let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, you can't do any wrong. Like, you can't go too big on this, because as you exist in your profile on social media, so you exist in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the two merge. And so and Dean was somebody that we did ground it a little bit more in him, being the guy of saying, should we be doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And but we didn't want to hammer it too hard, right? Like, I think he's somebody that feels like the audience. You love her in one scene, you hate her in the next, and that contributes to his inability to pull away from her.
Mm-hmm.
As he starts to realize that their fates are basically just entwined,
Mm-hmm.
And that she's losing it over this whole world.
Yeah.
But he just can't let go in the same way that, like, the audience can't let go.
Mm-hmm. You play a lot also, and I don't know if this was your intent, but on kind of mental health and how getting likes and followers play so much of an impact on that. And like, you're always, there's tons of kids out there now, and even older people who are they're looking for that like, they're looking for that follow. Was that kind of also something that you were planning, or was it not something that you were really focused on?
No, yeah, it was, because at the end of the day, we were never going to get Twitter or Facebook or Instagram to allow us to use the visuals of the platform, right? And I also didn't want to create a fake social media site, because I think that would have completely taken you out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So all I was left with was creating a psychological framework of the experience of social media.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I had. But at the end of the day, it makes it so it's not dated, right? Because it's always updating design. And it also then hits an audience a little different. So, like, a perfect example of that is all the comments that are happening, right? And that came out of a discussion with Bella, because she was saying, well, how are you going to do the comments? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really want to do a white screen with just seeing the comments. It'd be boring and not exciting. And she said, well, she had just done a music video where she used these full frame graphics. And she said, if you did something like that, she's like, that's what it feels like. Like, whether it's like positive or negative, she's like, you are getting hit in the face rapidly, ongoing, every day, every second, with just like people's comments about you hitting you full bore. Yeah. And I was excited by that, because I'm like, well, that's a psychological experience. Mm-hmm. And I now throw the audience, and that's, so it's rapid, it gets your heartbeat going, you're sort of confronted by it. And that became an example of really channeling you into the psychological experience of social media, rather than just, okay, here's an objective look at what it is. And I think, like, then, with her, it's happening all the time. It's how far are you willing to go? What are you willing to do to gain a following? Mm-hmm. And people say it won't happen, but, like, people are committing crimes on social media all the time. Yep. They get arrested very quickly, but they're doing it. Yep. Whether it's jumping into a cop car and then running off, or whether it's filming looting at a mall where you shouldn't be, or whether it's, whatever. And I think that the sort of empty pursuit of that is exactly what the film is about. Yeah.
Well, let me snag one last question before I let you go. What was the biggest obstacle filming this movie?
I would say the biggest challenge was the amount of action that we had to film on a independent budget and an independent schedule. And there were I wouldn't say there was one challenge. It was like every day. Like every day there was something. Like there was either a big action scene coupled with tons of other non-action scenes, or it was multiple 3 company moves to 3 different locations, or it was a big dialogue scene, or it was a location-based. I mean, so much of it was location. We shot in Oklahoma. It was 100 degrees, 105 degrees. We were shooting in July. A lot of stuff outside.
Oh, God.
So it was actually quite a challenging movie from a day-to-day perspective. But, you know, for me, I love the experience of it. You know, it was like a career high for me, for sure. And one of the best filming experiences I had. But I think I was only in that position because I'd already made 3 previous movies. I'd done stuff for very low budgets. I was having to just make it work. And in this one, I really had everything I needed to make the movie. But it was probably a 25-day schedule that we shot in 21 days.
Oh, nice job.
Yeah. So that was challenging. And do it in a way that doesn't make it suffer.
Yeah.
Right? The audiences don't know the budget. They don't know what was spent. They don't care. You know, and so you still had to make the action somewhat exciting. And so that was probably the biggest challenge, was having to accomplish the action scenes in a way where we didn't have the appropriate time to really do the action scene. Probably the easiest day was the shootout with the cops in the car, because that was the only thing we did that day.
Okay.
You know, because it's a single take.
Yeah.
So, and this came out of an experience I had making another movie where we did these long takes. And the advantage was you spent a lot of time rehearsing, but then once you got it, you got it. Whereas if you're shooting something else, once you got one angle, you got to move on to the next angle, to the next angle. And so in this case, like that, we set aside just one day. One day of our schedule was only that scene. And so we spent about the first half of the day rehearsing it. And then we got into it. We did about 9 takes.
Oh, wow.
Of the shootout. And it was basically Jake driving, Bella in the back, me operating the camera, our first AC in the front seat, squished down, trying not to be seen. And and then we got it. Once we got it, we were done. It was an early day.
Awesome. That's fantastic. That's really cool. Especially only 9.
Guns in action.
Yeah.
Really tough. You know, it's always about resetting, but I knew that this movie needed it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go as full bore as I could. So.
Awesome. Well, as I said, it really did pay off, especially all the action scenes. Excuse me. Those were probably the most enjoyable ones, because you could tell that, you know, you weren't looking at something that was fake. You were looking at something that, you know, hard work was put into. So thank you so much for speaking with me today.